They moved me to the garage like I was just another old thing they didn't know where to put. Right between the hedge clippers and a broken stroller, they laid out my mattress. No insulation, no apology, just a blanket and a shrug. My daughter-in-law said, "Why does he even need a bedroom? He just sleeps all day." And my son? He didn't say a word. So I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. The next morning, I was gone. And they didn't even notice. Not until the bank called to say the mortgage had been transferred out of their hands. That's when the silence got loud. This is the story of how I stopped making myself small. How I walked out of the garage, reclaimed my name, and reminded my family that silence doesn't mean surrender. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. I used to have a room with a window that faced the east. Mornings were my favorite. Soft light, the kind that didn't blind but warmed your eyelids gently before you even opened them. The mattress wasn't much, but it was firm, and I'd gotten used to the creak it made when I rolled onto my side. That window, it gave me something. A place to watch the sun rise and pretend I had some control over how the day would go. I gave that up without protest. When I moved in with Kevin and Ashley after my fall, it felt temporary. At least, that's how they framed it. Just while you're healing, Dad. 2 months tops. I'd fractured my hip slipping on some ice in my driveway. It was early February, and the whole damn world felt cold. But Kevin showed up at the hospital, looking worried, and Ashley followed close behind with a fake smile plastered across her face. They were family. What else was I supposed to say? I agreed, packed up what little I needed, and let them sell the house. My house. What I didn't tell them, what I didn't even tell the real estate agent, was that the mortgage was still in my name. Kevin and Ashley had been drowning in debt for years, but I never liked to meddle. When the notices started stacking up on their kitchen counter, credit card minimums, overdraft alerts, second warning from the electric company, I took it upon myself to help. I transferred the title of my house to Kevin, but kept the mortgage under my name through a family trust. I thought it would protect them. I thought it would keep things simple. I didn't think they'd turn around and treat me like I was in the way. It started small. A sigh when I turned up the TV volume. A subtle glance between them when I took too long to get up from the dinner table. But last Thursday, that was the day it turned ugly. We were in the kitchen, Ashley stirring something on the stove, Kevin scrolling on his phone, the kids bickering in the other room. I asked if anyone had seen the newspaper. Ashley didn't even look up. She just said, "Why do you even need a bedroom? You just sleep all day." There wasn't a trace of sarcasm or warmth in her voice. It was clinical, like she was discussing moving a box of junk into storage. I turned to Kevin, expecting him to say something, anything. But he just rubbed his forehead like he was tired of having to explain me. No one spoke for a few seconds. The moment just hung there. "Yeah, Dad," Kevin mumbled. "Ashley was thinking it might make sense to move you to the garage. We're tight on space with the kids, and you don't need much. We'll set up your bed out there. It'll be fine." Fine. Like a cot next to the lawn tools was fine. I nodded. I don't know why I didn't argue. Maybe because I was tired. Maybe because the sting of betrayal hits harder when it comes from your own blood, and all your instincts just shut down. Like your body goes numb so your heart doesn't explode. That night, Kevin helped me carry my mattress to the garage. He cleared out a corner between the water heater and the gardening tools. The floor was concrete, the walls unfinished. I saw a spiderweb the size of my palm in one corner, and the garage door rattled every time the wind blew. Ashley handed me a folded blanket. "It's temporary," she said. "Just until we can figure out the guest room." The guest room, the one I'd just vacated. My old room with the window. They gave it to their youngest, Lila, who wanted more space for her dolls and TikTok dance videos. She was sweet, and I didn't blame her. She was a child. But the way Ashley said it, "Figure out the guest room," like I was some stranger who'd overstayed his welcome, cut deep. I laid on the mattress that night, staring up at the garage ceiling. A bare bulb flickered overhead. Somewhere near my feet, the smell of fertilizer lingered. I could hear them laughing inside, plates clinking. Life moved on without me. I was still technically in the house, but I had been emotionally evicted. The garage wasn't a room. It was a message. "You're not needed here anymore." The next morning, I got up before anyone else. My joints protested, and the cold had worked its way into my bones. I shuffled into the kitchen, made coffee in silence. Ashley walked in, eyebrows raised like she forgot I was even allowed inside. "Oh," she said. "Didn't expect you up this early." "I still remember how mornings work," I said flatly. She smirked but didn't respond. Just opened the fridge and reached for almond milk. I sat at the table, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Kevin came in next, shirt half-buttoned, and offered me a quick nod. No apology, no small talk, just obligation. They didn't notice when I left that day. Didn't notice the envelope I took from the kitchen drawer with the bank info. Didn't notice the copy of the house deed I pulled from the filing cabinet in the den. Didn't notice that I had transferred the entire mortgage under a new trust, the one I'd quietly opened years ago when I first started helping Kevin out. I left them the shell of a house. But the bones? The real control? That still belonged to me. I packed light. A small suitcase. A photo of my late wife, Clara. My wedding ring, which I hadn't worn in years but never could throw away. I called Mick, my old union buddy, and he picked me up with a thermos of black coffee and a bag of gas station donuts. "You sure about this, Frank?" he asked as we drove away. I looked at the rearview mirror, at the house shrinking behind us, and felt nothing. "Yeah," I said. "They put me next to the lawn mower, Mick. I think I'm sure." The first morning in Mick's spare room felt like waking up from a bad dream. The bed was soft, too soft almost. My back had gotten used to the slab of memory foam on concrete. Still, I didn't miss the draft. I didn't miss the rustling of mice in the walls or the constant smell of grass clippings and old gas. I sure as hell didn't miss being a shadow in my own family's home. Mick lived in a small two-bedroom house just off a side street near the old Union Hall. He'd been divorced twice, had no kids, and ran his life like a man who'd long since stopped trying to please anyone. His house was a mess. Newspapers stacked on the couch, a leaky faucet in the bathroom, a dog named Buck who refused to get off my lap. But it was real. Messy, loud, honest. Not like the silence I left behind. He handed me a cup of burnt diner-style coffee that first morning and sat across the table from me in his undershirt. "I always said that woman of your sons had the eyes of a rattlesnake," he said without apology. "Mick, come on. I'm serious. You don't put your own father in a damn garage unless you've got ice where your heart should be." I didn't argue. I just sipped the coffee and stared out his window. No manicured backyard. No sandbox or swing set. Just a crooked fence and a view of someone's busted shed. It was more comforting than the view from Kevin's back patio had ever been. But still, no matter how right it felt to be gone, it didn't stop the questions from coming. What if Kevin realized the house was gone and came looking for me? What if he blamed me for everything falling apart? Was I really doing this for justice? Or was I just an old man throwing a tantrum because he didn't feel wanted anymore? Those questions kept me up the second night. I'd get up to use the bathroom and stop halfway down the hall, instinctively thinking I needed to be quiet for the kids. Then I'd remember they weren't here. No one was here except Buck and Mick, and neither of them gave a damn if I made noise. That silence, it started feeling good. It was the kind that doesn't ask you to justify your presence. The kind of silence that comes with freedom, not loneliness. Back at Kevin's place, I couldn't sneeze without someone looking annoyed. Ashley treated me like a broken appliance they hadn't thrown out yet. "Why do you always shuffle your feet? Do you need to keep the thermostat that high? Can you not watch TV during nap time?" God forbid I coughed during one of her Zoom meetings. One night, must have been the third or fourth since I moved into the garage. I remember laying there, listening through the thin wall as Kevin told Ashley, "He's not going to be around forever. Just let him be." She laughed. She laughed. And then she said, "Well, the faster he forgets how to use the microwave, the faster we can turn the whole garage into a gym." That's when I stopped waiting to be treated better. That's when I started planning. At Mick's place, I didn't have to tiptoe around. I had space to think. I pulled out all the paperwork I'd taken with me, the mortgage info, the trust documents, the bank contacts. Everything was still active, just like I left it. Kevin may have had the deed in his name, but I never gave up financial control. That house. It was technically still under my trust, and the automatic payments came from an account only I could access. I told Kevin I was handling the taxes and insurance out of the kindness of my heart, But that was only half true. The whole setup was mine. And now it was time to reclaim what I'd quietly preserved all along. The next day, I visited the bank. I wore a clean shirt, the good jeans, and the watch Clara gave me on our 25th anniversary. It was cracked down the face, but it still ticked just fine. I looked the manager, Denise, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a voice like she didn't have time for bullshit, straight in the face and said, "I'd like to update the trust on the mortgage and transfer the mailing address for all related documents." She raised a brow. "Everything okay, Mr. Delaney?" I gave a small, tired smile. "Just making sure I'm not paying for a house that treats me like an unwanted guest." She didn't ask more. She nodded and began the paperwork. By the end of the hour, it was done. The payments would now go through my trust. Notices would go to Mick's house. And I held the reins again. That night, I sat on the porch with Mick and told him everything. Every word Ashley had said. Every look Kevin gave me. The slow slide into being treated like a burden instead of a father. He cracked open a beer, handed it to me, and said, "About damn time, Frank." I didn't celebrate. There was no victory in this. No joy in pulling the rug out from under your own son. But there was peace. Not because I'd gotten even, but because I'd stopped being silent. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how long it would take them to notice I was gone. Days passed. No calls. No texts. Not even from the grandkids. I figured maybe Ashley had spun some story about me needing a break or going on a little trip. Or maybe they just didn't care. I spent most mornings reading the paper and playing cards with Mick. He wasn't the best company, half-deaf and swore like a sailor, but he didn't pity me, didn't tiptoe around what had happened. Sometimes that's all you need. Until one morning, about a week in, Mick handed me the phone. "It's your son." I took the receiver, hand steady. "Dad." Kevin's voice came through tight, angry, strained. "Why the hell did the bank call us?" There it was. The moment. I leaned back in the chair, looked out at the sky, and said simply, "I guess you finally noticed I was gone." I didn't hang up on Kevin. I didn't yell, or gloat, or say half the things I could have. I just let the silence stretch long enough to make my point, then told him, "It's still my name on that mortgage. Always has been. I just made a few adjustments." He started to say something, maybe a defense, maybe a threat, but I set the phone down gently on the table and walked outside. The air was cool, November creeping in like a slow leak under a door. I stood on Mick's warped wooden porch and breathed deep until my lungs burned. That house, the one Kevin and Ashley had been so eager to reclaim as their own, was now back in limbo. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted them to feel something. Anything. Not guilt, even. Just awareness. Awareness that I wasn't a piece of old furniture to be moved around when the layout no longer suited them. Inside, Mick watched me with narrowed eyes. He'd seen men like Kevin before, full of themselves when they think they've won, terrified when they realize they were never holding the cards. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. Kevin didn't call back that day. I figured he was scrambling, digging through the paperwork, trying to find some clause, some angle to throw at me. Ashley, I imagined, was furious. She liked having control, liked being the one who made decisions. I'd taken that from her, and I didn't doubt that the house suddenly felt smaller now that it wasn't entirely hers. Later that afternoon, I pulled out an old notebook from my suitcase. Inside were pages I hadn't read in years, letters Clara had written me when she was sick, reminders she left in her loopy, graceful handwriting. One said simply, "Dignity is not selfish." I read that line 3 times, then underlined it. She would have hated how they treated me. Not because she was vindictive, but because she loved hard and expected better from people. She would have told me to leave long before I ever found myself laying beside a weed trimmer to sleep. It wasn't until the next morning that the fallout truly began. My phone lit up at 8:14 a.m. Voicemail. Then another. Then a text from Kevin. "We need to talk. Now." Ashley followed with her own. "This is petty and cruel. We had a system." A system. That's what she called it. Like my presence was part of their plumbing or their Wi-Fi. Just something running in the background that they assumed would always be there. I ignored both messages. That afternoon, Mick and I went grocery shopping. As I loaded bags into the back of his truck, my phone rang again. Kevin, again. Mick looked at me. You gonna answer that? I stared at the screen. Let it buzz. Then pressed decline. He shook his head, half impressed. You've got more backbone than I gave you credit for, Delaney. Back at the house, I listened to the voicemail. Kevin's voice was tight, panicked. Dad, I don't know what you're doing. The bank's saying the payments aren't coming from my account anymore, and that the trust has changed. They won't tell me anything else. This isn't okay, and you need to fix it. Call me. He didn't say please. He didn't ask if I was all right. Didn't ask why I left, or if I needed anything. Just, fix it. Ashley's voicemail was nastier. You didn't even say goodbye to the kids. You've made this about you, like always. Do you know how hard we've worked to keep this house? And you pull this stunt to prove what? That you're still in charge? Grow up, Frank. I almost laughed at that one. Grow up. Coming from the woman who turned a man's bedroom into a Barbie doll annex before his body was even out of the sheets. I knew then that I couldn't go back. Not for a visit. Not for a holiday. Not even for the grandkids. Not yet. Because if I walked through that door, they'd see it as permission to reset the story. To pretend none of it happened. And I wasn't about to let them rewrite my pain into something convenient. The next day, a letter arrived. I recognized Kevin's handwriting immediately. It was rushed, all jagged loops and crooked lines. Dad, we're trying to make this work. We took you in. We gave you everything we could. And this is how you repay us? By pulling the mortgage and walking out without a word? The kids are confused. Lila cried when she saw your bed gone. Do you even care? You said family meant everything. Well, it doesn't feel like that right now. Call me. Kevin. I read it 3 times. The first time, I felt the familiar guilt rise up. That deep, aching kind that makes your chest feel tight and your throat hot. The second time, I felt anger. Not at Kevin, but at myself, for ever thinking silence would earn me respect. The third time, I felt something harder to name. Not peace. Not pride. Just stillness. They were hurting now, but only because the illusion of my usefulness had been shattered. I'd made myself so easy to ignore that when I finally spoke, it sounded like betrayal. That night, I called the bank again, just to confirm everything was updated. The rep on the other end was polite, efficient, and didn't ask questions. The mortgage was now under my newly amended trust. All payments redirected. Mailing address updated. My name, my terms. When I hung up, I found myself staring at the old picture of Clara again. I set it on the nightstand, next to my reading glasses and the watch. I think I did the right thing, I whispered. And for once, I believed it. It took 5 more days for Kevin to show up in person. I figured it would be sooner, but maybe it took that long for him to find the guts, or for Ashley to push him hard enough. Either way, I heard the truck before I saw him. That same old Tacoma with the dent in the passenger side door he never got fixed. The sound of it grinding into Mick's gravel driveway brought back 1,000 memories I didn't ask for. I was sitting on the porch, sipping hot coffee with Buck curled at my feet. Mick had left earlier to run errands, and I was grateful for the solitude. I needed to be clear-headed for what was coming. Kevin stepped out wearing jeans and a fleece he used to keep in my old coat closet. His jaw was clenched. No smile. No pretense. Just business. Dad, he said, not quite cold, but not warm either. I gave him a nod and motioned to the second chair. Might as well sit. He hesitated like he didn't want to give me that much ground, but sat anyway. The silence stretched long. He stared out at the fence line, then at his hands, like he was trying to find the exact right place to look that wasn't my face. You really left? He finally said. I did. Without saying goodbye to the kids. Without explaining. Without anything. I left when no one noticed I was there. That landed. I watched it hit him. His jaw tightened again, and he looked at me. Really looked this time. Why didn't you just talk to me? He asked. Why'd you have to go behind our backs, mess with the mortgage, get the bank involved? I didn't go behind your back, Kevin. I walked out the front door. You just never turned around to see it. He let out a breath through his nose, bitter. You're punishing us. I shook my head. No, I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. He didn't respond. I kept going. You let your wife put me in the garage, Kevin, next to the fertilizer and the old leaf blower. You didn't fight for me. You didn't even flinch. He rubbed the back of his neck, defensive. It wasn't like that. No, I said. Then what was it like? You heard her say, why does he even need a bedroom? And you said nothing. You watched me carry my own mattress out there. You told your daughter to pick which wall to put her dolls on. I thought you were okay with it. I let that hang in the air. Just long enough. No one's okay with being erased, Kevin. That shut him up. He looked down again, then muttered, Ashley didn't mean it like that. She meant it exactly like that. You just didn't want to deal with what it meant. He stood then, too agitated to stay still. Walked a few paces toward the truck, then turned around. I was under pressure, Dad. The house, the bills, the kids, Ashley's job. Everything was falling apart. I didn't have the energy to babysit your feelings on top of it. That word, babysit, rattled something in me. I wiped your nose when you were sick, Kevin. I drove 4 hours through a snowstorm to pick you up when your first car died. I paid for your college when your scholarships fell through. Was that babysitting? His face flushed. That's not fair. No. What's not fair? I said, standing now too, is watching my son pretend I'm a ghost until the bills stop getting paid. The wind blew hard just then, shaking the trees behind the fence. Buck lifted his head, alert, but didn't bark. Kevin shoved his hands in his pockets. So what happens now? You keep the mortgage hostage until we beg. I almost laughed. I'm not holding anything hostage. You're welcome to pay. You just won't be paying through me. He blinked, confused. I didn't cancel the payments, Kevin. I just stopped letting them come from your account. The trust is handling it now. The house is safe, as long as I decide it should be. There it was, the real power shift. He looked at me like he barely recognized the man in front of him, like I had grown a spine overnight. But the truth was, it had always been there. I just kept it bent for too long, trying to make room for people who didn't deserve it. He exhaled sharply. You think Mom would have wanted this? That stopped me cold. I looked him in the eye. Steady. Calm. She would have never let it get this far. She would have told you to respect your father. And if you didn't, she would have packed my bag for me and driven me here herself. He said nothing. Finally, he muttered, Ashley's pissed. I imagine she is. She says you're trying to punish us for not treating you like royalty. I laughed once, dry and bitter. No, Kevin. I didn't want to be royalty. I just didn't want to be garbage. He shifted again, uncomfortable. What about the kids? They miss you. I paused. That one hit different. I miss them too, but they don't get to be my keepers. And if I have to disappear for a while to teach you what respect looks like, then so be it. He nodded slowly, defeated but not yet humbled. He didn't apologize. Not that day, but he didn't argue anymore either. Is this forever? He asked quietly. No, but it's not ending today. He turned back toward his truck. Well, you know where we are. No, I said. I know where you left me. He got in the truck without another word. As the engine sputtered to life and pulled down the gravel, I sat back down, picked up my cold coffee, and exhaled long and slow. The garage was a choice they made. Leaving was mine. It didn't take long for Ashley to come knocking. 3 days after Kevin's visit, Mick answered the door with a grunt and a beer still in his hand. He didn't bother with pleasantries, just leaned into the frame, took one look at Ashley standing on his porch in her pressed slacks and sharp eyeliner, and said, well, the queen has arrived. She rolled her eyes, pushing past him. Is he here? Depends. You bring a peace treaty or just more attitude? I brought questions, she snapped, heels clicking on the worn floor. I was sitting in the kitchen, flipping through the classifieds like I might find some version of my old life tucked between lost dogs and lawnmowers for sale. I didn't even look up when she walked in. You've got 2 minutes, I said. She scoffed. Seriously? That's how you talk to me now? That's how I talk to someone who put me next to a snow shovel and called it temporary. She dropped her purse on the table like she was settling in to win. You blindsided us. Kevin's been a wreck. The kids are confused. And now we're trying to sort out a mortgage you've wrapped in a legal maze. I finally looked up. Good. Confusion is the first step toward clarity. She crossed her arms. Don't get poetic with me, Frank. You want us to beg? Say we're sorry? Fine. I'm sorry you felt unwelcome. But the way you handled this? Sneaking around like a saboteur? That's not what family does. I stood then. Slowly. What family does, I said, my voice flat, is make space for each other. Not just in square footage, but in dignity. Family notices when someone is shrinking. Family doesn't leave someone to rot in a garage while pretending it's a favor. You had heat. You had your own space. We gave you what we could. You gave me your leftovers. I snapped. You gave me the corner of your life you didn't know what else to do with. And you dressed it up like sacrifice. She flinched, just for a moment. Then the mask came back on. You act like we kicked you out, she said, softer now but colder. We didn't. You walked away. You made it easy. We stood in silence. The only sound was Buck's slow panting from the hallway. Then, Ashley reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Here, she said, sliding it across the table. Kevin's proposing a compromise. You keep the mortgage and the trust, but let him manage the payments again. That way, we have consistency. I didn't touch the folder. Let me ask you something, I said. Would you have offered that compromise if the bank hadn't called? She hesitated. No, I answered for her. Because until the bank called, I was just the man in the garage. Her lips tightened. I don't know what you want from us. I don't want anything. That's the part you can't seem to accept. I left. I reclaimed what was mine. And now, you don't get to rewrite what happened. She looked around, taking in the chipped paint, the loose floorboard near the sink, the cluttered table. This is what you chose. I smiled. It's not much, but it doesn't make me feel like trash. She grabbed the folder, stuffed it back into her bag. Fine. Live out your drama. Just don't expect the door to stay open forever. The door was already closed. I just noticed. And then, just as she turned to go, Mick reappeared in the hallway. Arms crossed, unimpressed. You're done? He asked. Ashley paused, then gave a tight nod. Well, I'd offer you a drink, but I'm all out of whatever makes someone believe their own bullshit. She rolled her eyes and stormed out. The door slammed behind her. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not out of spite, but out of sheer relief. Because now it was all out in the open. There was no apology. Not after Kevin's visit. Not after Ashley's. Just silence, thicker than before. More intentional. And I didn't break it. It felt strange at first. Waking up in a house that didn't share blood with me. Drinking coffee across from an old friend instead of a grandchild. Watching the world pass by from a different porch. But eventually, it stopped feeling like loss. It started feeling like freedom. One morning, I walked to the park down the street. Mick's idea. He said I needed to stretch more, get some sun on my damn face. So I did. There were old benches and yellowing grass and a few joggers pretending it wasn't already November. I found a quiet spot and sat down with my thermos and a small stack of envelopes. Inside one was the title to the house. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I doubted what I'd done, but because I finally saw it clearly. It wasn't just a document. It was the last tether between who I'd been, quiet, accommodating, invisible, and who I was now. I thought about burning it, or donating the house outright to charity. But then I thought about Lila. She used to sit on my lap in the evenings, curled up in a blanket, asking for bedtime stories I didn't even remember telling. She liked the ones about my younger days, working at the mill, climbing trees as a boy, meeting Clara at the corner diner. She'd squeeze my hand when the stories got sad. But it ends happy, right, Grandpa? I owed her something better than silence. So I called a lawyer. We drew up a new trust, one that skipped over Kevin and Ashley entirely. The house would go to the kids, both of them, on their 25th birthdays. Until then, it would remain under my trust, maintained and untouched. No gym renovations. No guest room shuffles. They wouldn't know for years. But when they did, they'd understand what I tried to do. That night, I drove to the cemetery. I hadn't been back since Clara's birthday in July. Her name was etched clean and soft against the stone. Still felt impossible that she'd been gone 6 years. I sat on the bench beside her and poured out everything. The garage. The way they laughed when they thought I couldn't hear. The cot. The mildew. The feeling of being an afterthought in a home I paid for. I didn't do it to hurt them, I told her. I did it to remember myself. I laid a small bouquet of sunflowers on her grave. She always hated roses, said they were too dramatic, too showy. Give me something cheerful, she used to say. Give me something that doesn't beg for attention. She would have been proud. Not because I got even, but because I finally got out. I spent Thanksgiving with Mick and some neighbors from the Veterans Center. We ate too much, drank too early, and played cards until someone started snoring in the recliner. Kevin didn't call. Ashley didn't text. The kids didn't ask for me. But that was okay. Sometimes peace doesn't come with hugs and reconciliation. Sometimes it comes in the form of an empty chair you chose not to sit in. They thought I'd sit in that garage until I died. Quiet, grateful, small. But I left. I took back my name, my home, and my dignity, not out of spite, but because silence had become its own kind of coffin. I didn't want to be buried that way, not while I was still breathing. Maybe one day Kevin will see what I meant. Maybe one day Lila will read that trust and understand who I was when the adults in her life forgot. But even if they don't, it's all right. Because I see me now, and I'm done sleeping beside lawn tools. If you've ever been made to feel like a burden in your own family, like your presence is something to be managed instead of respected, then you understand why Frank walked away. Sometimes, protecting your peace means closing the door, even when it's to the people you love. What would you have done in his shoes? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that hit home.